photographer and chairman of Universal Trust, Mike Upstone.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Microphones? Okay. How's that? So, yeah, the title of this talk is Win-Win-Winning. And a win-win-win is a win which is financial stroke economic, social, and environmental. And in order to achieve that, we need to use some interesting tools which have been developed over some period of time. And they develop a holistic technique for management, for organization, and for making sure that we get the results that we want in an increasingly complicated world. And the beauty of these tools is that they simplify reality for us, and they make our position much easier to manage and to control, to produce the results that we want. And there's a heart of this, and this is about people, and it's about involvement of people, and it's about the way that we integrate our activities together. So the subtitles are The Economics of Sustainable Energy and Conscious Tools for Enduring Success and Effective Transition. Originally this was 2 talks, so I've had to compress it quite a bit, and now I'm going to try and unpack it for you. So the inspiration behind these items that I'm going to talk about today are 2 quotes. Buckminster Fuller, a guy who was very familiar locally, and unbelievable charismatic character and great thinker. And he said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And there's another philosophical underpinning for what I'm going to talk about today, and that is be still as a mountain, flow like a great river. And I'm going to explain how we can be both still as a mountain and we can flow like a great river at the same time. So those are the inspirations for what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a quick overview because we're going to cover quite a lot of topics. So I was asked to talk about what happens when free energy emerges and the implications of that for sustainability and communities, for traditional sectors like oil and gas, and we're going to go into the issues of transition versus tradition when it comes to organizational structure. And the implication of that is that we need models that eliminate guesswork, and these are based on nature and on human nature and on scientific method. And that will lead us into some very practical tools for delivering sustainable results, and more than that, driving straight through sustainability into abundance, because that is the implication of clean, pure, or free energy, however you like to think about it. And that's also going to create some business opportunities. We're also going to go into the issues for inventors, open sourcing, and how they can deal with corporate piracy while protecting their position. And that will lead us into the potential to integrate some things that are already existing out there in the world today, and how we can put this system back together in a new way to make a new funding model and possibly even self-fund projects if we can find suitable partners to work with. Then I'm going to talk about currency, and in particular I'm going to talk about an energy-backed currency and the requirements of currency. So we need to have an understanding of the tools that we're using, and the need for other currencies, because an energy-backed currency on its own isn't going to give us everything that we need of the functions of currency at the present time. And all of these things, if we integrate them together, are going to give us a new paradigm. And so I'll go into a summary on the transition issues as well. So let's look at the start point. What happens when free energy emerges? Well, everything is a function of energy. Speak to a physicist and he will tell you that matter is energy. Everything is energy. And let's take a couple of examples here. What if we're walking down a beach one day and we find a nice, interesting looking glittery object, and we decide to pick it up? And we go, that feels pretty heavy. It could be gold. So we then take it to somebody and he says, hey, yes, that's gold. and then we get some money for it. Well, we've had to put some energy into this process in order to realize that gold. Otherwise, if we just avoided it, not stumbled across it, not taken the walk along the beach, we hadn't picked it up, we hadn't recognized it had potential value, it would still be lying on the beach. So even when it comes to things like gold, then there is an issue of the energy that we put in. And of course, when it comes to manufacturing things like a car, then everything again is a function of energy. The origin of the materials comes from mining, refining, logistics, storage, distribution, manufacturing processes, etc. So absolutely everything is a function of energy. So one of the issues for us is that we need to have some responsible transition strategies, because if not, then we're in the position like a lot of other inventors of incredible world-changing technologies. Bang, there's a collision against the existing system and the vested interest of that system. And I believe that that leads us into a requirement for open sourcing, because inventors who have tried to hold on to their products have made themselves vulnerable. They're the one point that a major industry or a corporation or someone who's got malign intent and vested interests to protect, it's easy to pick on that individual, to pressurize them, and in an extreme situation even potentially to bump them off, to threaten their family or whatever. So I believe that we need to send these products viral, these concepts viral, and that offers a degree of protection to the inventor, because then if anyone is going to attack that inventor, well, it's pointless, and it all becomes a little bit embarrassing if everyone knows about the technology. So the concept behind this is that that is a protection mechanism for the inventor. So you may well ask the question, well, how does the inventor get money off that? How do they get the reward and the return on energy, which is a universal principle, to look after themselves and their families, and to get a return for perhaps a lot of years of hard work, research, cost and risk. So we can do that in various ways, but I believe that the implication is that we can go small scale, we can go private, we can develop projects in the third world, and we can seed those projects and we can test and adjust from that situation. So let's take the situation of the inventor who has an energy product and wants to take it to the world. How can they protect themselves? Well, patenting is the traditional route that a lot of people look at, but it's very expensive. And only about 60 or 70% of products are actually capable of patenting. And we know that certain governments around the world have actually taken on patents, put pressure on inventors, and made those patents secret even. So the inventor could put out this technology now open source. And here is where we bring in a few of the ninja law tools to protect them. So we can look at the copies, we can look at the models that people already have to put out things as open source, and we can append a commercial license to that. So that if any major corporation comes along and decides to exploit that technology, it's your product, it's now effectively open to contract, and you can set your own terms for that contract. And why not? So you can say, it's free to people. If you folks want to use it, you can have it, but please remember me and send me a donation when you're making a profit or you're cutting the costs through using my energy technology, for example. And that should help to develop diverse, numerous, small-scale income streams, which is actually quite a potent position to be in. You're not reliant on one company who could say, thank you very much for your product, but for some reason we've decided not to develop it, and so you won't be getting as much money as you expected in terms of perhaps commissions and things like that. So the other thing that we can do is we can put the technology into trust, and trust is a particular form of law known as equity, which goes back to the common law in England, and it's high law, and it is extremely powerful law, and it is different from legislation, regulation and statutes, which is the way that most of the world is governed at the moment. So this is extremely powerful stuff. It takes it into a law form which is based on conscience and intent. And if we set up a trust, then we become the settlor in England, or the grantor in the States, of the trust. We're the creator of that trust. And what that means is we make the law of the trust. and that puts us into a very powerful position. There are other elements of trust law, but I'm not here to talk about trust law specifically today, just to say that it is a higher and very powerful form of law, and we can use various forms of law to create a multi-layered strategy to protect inventors. So we can sell or we can gift our intellectual property into a trust. It's now into a corporate body like, for example, a limited company, but one that operates on higher law, and one which is subject to the rules or the maxims of equity. And one of those is that equity will not allow statutes to act as a cloak for fraud. Have a think about that for a second and the implications of statutory legislation. So by using trust, by using a commercial license, by using the ability to open source technology, and adding another element, we can develop significant layers of protection for inventors. And it's not very well known at the moment, but copyright is being used in place of patents, and copyright precedes patents. And that means it has a more powerful position in law. And the beauty of copyright is you don't have to shell out lots of money to create a copyright claim. So part of putting your product out into the public domain is that you could copyright it also. And that means it's also on the public record. So we've now got a... Sorry, must have been lunch. So we now have a multi-tiered strategy that we can employ to protect the position of inventors and give them a position where they can actually gift this Okay, how's that? So we've now got the ability to develop a multi-tiered strategy which is unbelievably powerful for protecting the inventors of potentially disruptive technologies. So we're going to look at other techniques as to how we can reduce that disruption element. And the disruption element can be reduced by creating small-scale, private, third-world projects so that we can test and adjust these. For example, in the environment of an eco-community or a sustainable community. Microphone's gone again, has it? Okay. Technical people? I now have to subject myself to... this is traditional at your airports, I believe. How are we doing? Thank you. And could you guys reduce the size of the screen slightly so I can read the bottom line on the presentation also? Otherwise I might be stabbing in the dark a bit here. So yeah, we can engage with communities in order to get these technologies out, and part of what we need to do is to model sustainability by linking a whole range of sustainable technologies into a community environment where we can model governance and social processes as well, ones that engage the collective consciousness, the wisdom of the crowd. In other words, absolutely everybody, because everybody has equal value. And this goes to a concept which was developed by a guy called Francis Galton. And he was a famous statistician, and he went to a country fair one day. And being a statistician, going to a country fair was quite an exciting prospect because there were an awful lot of people there. And he stood on this little hill and he looked around and he went, great opportunity for statistics. So off he goes roaring through this country fair, and he sees a guess the weight of the ox competition. And he thinks, that's exactly the opportunity I've been looking for my statistical experiment. So he's pondering about how to use statistics to come up with the weight of the ox. And he sees a big bunch of farmers. And he goes, I reckon the farmers will have a good idea about the weight of the ox. And then he saw a big bunch of butchers, and he goes, and I reckon the butchers will have a good idea of the weight of the ox. But what Galton actually did was, he averaged up everyone's guess. And guess what? His guess was more or less precisely the weight of the ox. In fact, it was within about 2 pounds or 1 kilo. And the nearest guesses of everyone else, including all the butchers and all the farmers, were over 10 pounds off in each direction. So he'd found something that tapped into the wisdom of the crowd, as he called it, or the collective consciousness. And this has profound implications. It means that no matter who you are, no matter what you know, no matter how old you are, you have something of use that can be combined to create a better result than it would have existed without your input. So, guys, have you managed to shrink the screen a little bit yet for me? Do you think you can do that? So.
Unfortunately, the formatting is incorrect, and so.
Okay.
Build the slideshow.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So yeah, we need to model a new economy along the way, and that's one thing that we need to play with. So, guys, can you just click on the next slide for me, please? So, what happens when free energy emerges? There are major implications for possession and ownership. Are we going to continue to sustain an unsustainable system? And I'll explain just how unsustainable this system is very shortly with some interesting facts and figures. Or are we going to use it to help everybody, a holistic approach? And this means we need to engage with the root of our philosophy. Is it going to be about us and them, dichotomy, or is it about good for all? And it's about time that we used a holistic model. And the interesting things about holistic models are that a few companies, a few organizations, a tiny number of them, have been employing these technologies and techniques for quite a while. And they are unbelievably powerful and effective. And the other option is, do we go top down or do we go bottom up? And I think you know the answer. It's probably going to be a combination of both, but there is nothing more powerful than engaging with the people directly, as we've seen by the internet, and letting things move virally and engaging from the bottom up. That gives us several advantages in terms of a model. It means we've got diversification. That means that different people can try different things, and what works will succeed. And this is how nature works. So let's start at the end of when free energy emerges and the implications for money. Because if everything is a function of energy, then that means if energy is free, everything will eventually have to be free. Let's just think about that for a second and let's absorb it. The implications of that are that they will change absolutely everything. That means we can move into a state of abundance. And if we think about the implications of living in a state of abundance, that means we can deal with problems like pollution in the oceans and not worry about the cost of that cleanup. In fact, it could be turned into a very profitable activity because there's a lot of valuable things in plastics that can be employed in terms of energy, producing metals, free water, and pure water out of some of the waste-to-energy technologies that people have already developed. The implications of working bottom-up and virally as well are that we will be in a strategically diverse environment. What does that mean? It means that if we have a centralized grid at the moment and a major power station gets knocked out by some kind of natural disaster or whatever, then a lot of people are going to be without electricity. But if every single home or every village and every community is generating their own energy, then we have a resilient model where the energy can be redistributed. If some house has a problem or a local area of a grid has a problem, then we can send the energy in from a village in another direction, for example. So it puts us into a much more survivable position as well as an abundant position. So we need an approach that works with nature, and that's why we need to have a triple win approach, a holistic approach. And this ground up economic situation that will arise out of free energy means that there will be a renaissance in innovation and creativity as well, because people won't need to stress about paying their mortgage. They won't need to stress about how they're going to feed their children and whether they're going to get clean water and how they deal with their waste. And I'll talk about a few of those solutions as we go through this talk. So I believe that the key issue associated with free energy is whether we are going to employ the tools that will enable us to create a conscious transition or a disruption. And we need to think about everything consciously and in terms of tools. And that is going to be a key theme that is going to move through this talk. So if every house has a free energy machine, then cost becomes reversed. And especially while we look at a transitional situation, those houses will be able to sell or export their power back to the grid or privately to their neighbours, for example. And this can happen on a small community basis. And I believe that the eco-communities and the conscious communities are going to be the kind of environment where this sort of stuff is going to integrate and take off first of all. And they need to know about some of these tools as well. So houses and communities can export the abundance, the surplus of food and of energy and of incredible advanced healing technologies as well. So what's going to happen to price of energy as well? Well, price is not just a function of demand. And the issue about price rising at the moment is all based on this myth of scarcity. So when we move to a world where energy is free and abundant, then there's going to be an implication on the supply side. And that means that the value of energy is going to start to drop. So in the short term, energy prices will probably continue to rise. But when free energy technology gets released to the world, and especially if it's done on an open source or viral basis through the internet, then there's going to be the start of that transition. And it will be a transition because not everyone is going to be plugged into this information. It's going to take time for the information to spread. And not everyone is going to be capable of building a free energy machine, for example. So this is where the skills and abilities of engineers and electricians and mechanics and other people are going to come into play. So ubiquity is going to produce abundance, but that is going to take a certain period of time. And it very much depends on how the inventors decide to distribute their technologies. So what are the implications for these traditional industries like oil, gas and electricity? Well, I think there is a certain school of thought that says that they've been trying to run away from or suppress free energy technology for quite some time. And in a way, if you're living in a world of scarcity, then you can understand it. They want to look after themselves, their employees' jobs, their shareholder value, etc. It's just that their values have got, well, let's face it, way out of kilter. And that's going to cause them a problem. Does anyone recognize the guy on the right? That's Darwin. And the key message of Darwin wasn't that survival is the fittest. He only mentioned that once. On a number of other occasions, though, what he mentioned was that the species that is most capable of adaptation and cooperation and collaboration has a much higher chance of survivability. So we need to be careful about what lessons we drag out of the old paradigm in order to create our new paradigm and make sure that we latch onto the correct ones, because there's a lot of myths establishing the new paradigm. I mentioned them. Well, I had a conversation with the chief executives of office of Kodak in the late 1990s, and with Fuji, and with various other companies, as I was working in digital photography at the time. And prior to that, I'd worked as a management consultant with FTSE 100 companies, which is the top 100 companies in the UK, and also as a market analyst. And I had a pretty distinct appreciation for the fact that digital imaging was going to change the world of digital photography together, forever. Interestingly, those companies were in a state of complete denial. They were coming out with stuff like, oh, the quality's never going to be as good. Well, the fact was that in astronomy, it was already tens of thousands of times better than film could deliver. And it had been in use for many decades. So Kodak were in a position where they weren't too interested in receiving advice, because at that stage in the late 90s, the value of the company was 50 times their earnings. So that means the value of the company was 50 times their profits for that year, and they were feeling that life was pretty good. I felt that that was the peak. and that they would be rapidly running off a cliff, and in fact I told them so. I gave them about 10 years, and that's pretty much what it actually took them. And it was obvious, and it was obvious for the record industry as well. They had made a fortune from film, chemical and paper sales over the years. So it's a little bit understandable that they wanted to hang on to that. And they had no awareness of how to grab hold of this new paradigm of digital photography. Yeah, they produced one of the first digital cameras, but the issue was that they were trying to ride two ponies in the same race. And my advice to them was very simple. Get as much money as you can out of the old system, stick it into another company, make it absolutely and completely dedicated to digital, and get them to partner with as many other companies in the market as possible and collaborate with them. Collaborate first and then compete. And that comes from a guy called Deming, another great American whose thoughts and philosophy were absolutely synergistic to that of Buckminster Fuller. So Kodak didn't do that, and Kodak no longer exists. And all the people who worked for Kodak found that their pensions overnight suddenly disappeared as well. So the same situation is liable to happen to the oil and gas industry. If they don't get a grip on the new paradigm, they're going to put themselves out of business. And before they know it, they will be just finished. The grid and the flow of energy is going to invert. And if they get involved with this and they support things in a holistic way and they recognize their duties and obligations to their fellow men and fellow women and the children of the planet and the planet itself, then there is a way to survive. Survival is optional, and it looks like at the moment they're not committed to take the option. So I foresee that we got business, but so many major companies, and it will be quite amazing who end up watching this, because it's not very long at all. We're talking about transition. For a time, survival is optional. And if these structure and way of manner, that might be a quarters. In the meantime, the so the key issues for an organisation have been distilled down from an exercise I've been involved with on a voluntary basis called MOSE, the Model of Sustainable Organisations. And I thinned these out as much as possible on the quality management principles of if it doesn't have anything, then take it away and let's get a system with as few possible and as simple as possible. Because simplicity is powerful, it works. And if we're going to build anything, even a house, for example, then we need to focus on basics right first before we start finessing our system. A lot of people are very intent on looking clever and stuff like that, but let's make stuff that works. And the key issues for an organisation, I believe, are intent, structure, and process. And this philosophy is something that I've been giving to the eco community, sustainable community, spiritual community people as well. And the reason for that is that a lot of them have had issues on how they organise themselves and how they involve the wisdom of the crowd and how they bring in sustainability principles. So intent, what's that? We know about it a little bit from quantum physics, but I'm going to draw an analogy. Our ancestors have been sailing seas and ocean for hundreds, no, thousands of years, and they've mostly been doing it incredibly successfully. The intent is a fixed element. It's like their values. Values are a very important part of intent. You can also view it as being a target. It's where they wanted to go. So it makes a lot of sense that before you leave port, unless you're on some kind of exploratory mission, you know where you're going with your cargo or whatever. And that's the intent. It's where you intend to go. Then you need a process. And in this case, if we're going to work on principles that nature works with, then we need a conscious process that has feedback loops involved with it. And that means that you constantly reassess where you are against your aspiration of getting to your intent. So that's like your ship, which may never have been on course from the moment it left port to the moment it arrived at the other end, was capable of coping with wind and with tide all along the way, and constantly able to adjust its course so that it actually ended up making progress and getting there. So a flexible process that employs the wisdom of the crowd. And the next element is structure. And in this particular case, the structure that I'm talking about is, for example, a trust or a foundation or a limited liability company or a whole mix of those things. Thinking about our tools, we've got purposes for these things. What do we want to achieve? So in an eco-community environment, for example, and I'll stick with that analogy as well for a little while, then the structure could be about, on the one hand, protecting assets, looking after the buildings, the houses, the land, on behalf of the people, the community. And on the other hand, if they want to start trading with their free energy and the abundance of food and the healthcare technology and teaching people about straw bale house building, etc., then they need a different kind of operating structure for that, one that purely manages the operations. And strangely enough, I think someone called Howard Hughes had a similar sort of idea. He held his factories and his land and his hotels, etc., in a trust, and he did his interface through an operating company, which stood between that and the operations themselves on the ground. So intent, structure and process gives us a three-legged stool of stability for creating a sustainable organization, one that remains in balance, one that is capable nevertheless of evolving at the same time. So the issues of transition and tradition imply that conscious transition is essential. And this consciousness needs to be applied to all of the concepts and all of the tools that we're bringing into that situation. And my conclusion is that that's actually pretty unlikely to come from traditional industry because they are so completely short-termist and dysfunctional. They are the true masters of sticking their heads in the bucket and believing that they can't see a problem and therefore it doesn't exist. So they might be big and powerful, but they're not actually going to be around for very long. And this is how long they're around for on average. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about what Buckminster Fuller called cybernetics and Deming called systems thinking. And here are the statistics. The average life expectancy of a company in the S&P 500 has dropped from 75 years in 1937 to 15 years. And it's probably less than that now. And the average life expectancy of companies in Europe is 12.5 years. And companies really think that they're being successful, only for a very short time. So we need to ask the question why, because this is pretty remarkable stuff. Most people have got no idea that, that corporate dysfunctionality is this bad. So here's our answer. Everything forms a system. Organizations leaving everything to chance eventually lose everything. Alternatively, they can operate with intent, consciously and systematically. And that's from this free sustainability stroke quality management exercise that a bunch of guys that I'm working with in London have produced and thrown out for free on the web. This links into the international standard of sustainability, but this is a more practical aspect of it because this is the how-to, and this is based on companies that really have done considerably better than 12.5 years or 15 years. These are companies that manage to evolve and improve dynamically because they're actually working pretty much completely in reverse to your average major company. To the degree that, for example, let's take Toyota. Toyota were very inspired by Deming, as was Japanese industry after the Second World War. And Toyota subsequently became the world's leading motor manufacturer. They now have over 300,000 employees. Guess how many levels of management they have? 4. And there's a reason for that. The management are there to serve the people, to help them enjoy their work, to learn from it, and to build a conscious system that constantly evolves. And unlike Ford in the 1970s, when the directors knew that car after car was coming off the production line with built-in flaws, in Toyota, it's not the cleaner who's got the permission to turn off the production line when they see a flaw, but they have the right and the duty and the obligation and the responsibility to tap the supervisor on the shoulder, and the supervisor has, and they do. And that's how they build in quality to their products, by devolving responsibility to the ground floor. And one of the lessons of life is, if you treat people irresponsibly, they tend to act irresponsibly. Let's cast our minds back very shortly to the Second World War. You had people who were just in their teens and in their early 20s who were holding positions of enormous responsibility, and they rose to that task. And the world is now facing a crisis as a result of perverse, corrupt and incompetent governance and management systems. So it's up to us, all of us, but especially the young people, I think, because they're the ones who are going to be inheriting the crap that the rest of us have left for them, to step up to the plate and to bring their authority and their responsibility into this situation. But we all need to work together in a holistic manner to achieve this. So we need a method for organising and managing change in harmony with people and in nature. And systems thinking has some interesting assumptions underpinning it about the nature of people and the nature of nature. And as I've said, they're completely in reverse to the normal sort of organisational norms, which are defunct. So systems thinking and cybernetics already exists. Effectively, it's the science of management. But it works on the principle that people have a sense of integrity. They want to work for their own sake. And there's quite a good TED talk around at the moment that talks about what motivates people, what really motivates people. And what really motivates people is not bonuses. That demotivates people. Because your average banker is on a golf course at the weekend trying to perfect his swing. He's not being paid for that, he's paying for that privilege. So targets and bonuses actually invert the system and they corrupt it. What really motivates people is mastery, enjoyment, perfection, improvement, cooperation, coordination, being appreciated, appreciating other people, working in a great team and having fun while they're doing it. Not being collared and coshed and cuffed and beaten around the head for not achieving their targets this month. And Deming had something very interesting to say about targets as well. He said, in essence, that there is no point setting a target for a system. If you set a target for a system and you don't know its capability, then the system will deliver what the system will deliver. And if you do know the capabilities of a system, and you set targets, the system is still going to deliver what the system is going to deliver. So there is absolutely no point in setting targets whatsoever. What is important is to understand the capabilities of the system and the factors that impact on the system. And whether you've got a normal fluctuation in the system, which normally in this dysfunctional management world leads to what Deming called tampering, or you have a special cause, which is something that needs to be investigated. So the theory underpinning this systems thinking stuff is that everything is connected, and that's holistic. So if we start to look at systems in a different way and incorporate all the data, but to consider not just quantity of data, but quality of data, then we have a way of simplifying reality and making it much more understandable and much more manageable and controlling the results. So another analogy of current organisational norms is it's like trying to drive your car while looking in the rearview mirror. Whereas if you use systems thinking, you can start to forecast ahead, and that gives you the radar of a bat that starts to look over the horizon and make things predictable. So this is based on scientific method. And in fact, an underpinning of scientific method is theory. So all the people who've poo-pooed conspiracy theory over the years, it's time to bite our knuckles a little bit, because knowledge or information that is not unpinned by theory is merely a collection of useless facts. Theory enables us to connect it together and start to make predictions, and using predictions we can start to forecast what's going to happen in the future. So part of everything is connected is that nature is a system and man is a system as well. And if you like, if you want to put it in these terms, there is a divine plan, but there is something that also allows free will and evolution. And a systems approach is what enables us to achieve this fine balance between innovation and constant improvement while remaining in control of the system itself, the balance. And this is how nature manages itself. Chaos theory. You might want to consider that for a second. So what happens to a bowl of water when it freezes overnight? Well, you're either going to end up with a random sort of effect of noise on the water, or if there is a resonant frequency, then you will start to get crystals that grow. But the interesting thing about when there is this resonant frequency is that the crystals start to grow from all over the place, from different directions, and they start to grow together perfectly. And we are at this time, and that's why we're all together at the moment. So as a function of nature, we're starting to resonate together. We understand there's a problem with the system and it needs to be fixed. And this talk is about the tools that we can apply to fixing it. So here's some contributors to systems thinking. The guy on the left, Leonardo da Vinci, probably everyone knows. The other two guys are also great heroes. The one on the top right is Buckminster Fuller, and the one underneath him is Dr. W. Edwards Deming. So systems thinking says that everything is connected. Well, that's proven in every sense. Ask a physicist. And as I've explained, it uses scientific method to simplify complexity. It's based on nature and human nature. And it also has another key tenet, which is it's about critical thinking. It uses critical thinking, which is open-minded inquiry. And that's what real science is about, to create these hypotheses, these theories, to develop a systematic approach to continuous improvement. If you like, what it does is it replaces unconscious assumption with conscious hypothesis. And if we have a conscious hypothesis, then it is like you're looking at me now, I'm looking at you. How many of us are cognizant of our blind spot? Until I mention it, of course, yeah, we do. But what we tend to do is we jump on these assumptions and we're using them every day. So systems thinking tends to flush out these unconscious assumptions and move them into this environment of conscious hypothesis. And at that point, we can start to test them and we can start to prove it. So another key element of systems thinking is about collaboration. And this collaboration means that we can move into conscious oneness. We can work as a team. We can work together. We're no longer accounts versus marketing. Round 12, ding ding. It is us working together as a whole system. So how it works is it actually uses the hypothesis that everything is linked to or limited by our level of thinking. And the beauty of this approach is along the way it absolutely flips on its head unconscious paradigms. Hierarchy, command and control, targets, bonuses, costs. And it replaces them with things like the customer and the people. So Deming said something like, the moment you put anything ahead of the customer, costs, profits, sales, shareholder value, you're no longer operating sustainably. And there'll be a price to pay. And there's a big price to pay for most companies. And this is why they're going out of business. Bye-bye Apple. I've been using your products for many years. They're not going to be around for much longer, are they? I don't think so. Because they're abusing their position with the customer. And they're putting other things like profits ahead of delighting, not just pleasing, but delighting the customer. And this is a key principle. If we put the customer first, and within our organization, if we put the people first, and we construct a conscious system, then we will automatically eliminate waste. We will automatically improve. We will automatically deliver quality. And we will automatically stay ahead of the customer to such a degree that when the next product goes out, they go, wow, that's fantastic. And they did it for a little time, but now they're worried about other things like money. So it avoids mindless copying. The mindless copying of hierarchy, of ego, of targets, bonuses, etc. from the old system. And as a byproduct, it automatically inspires creativity that enables transition to take place. And as a result, it puts profit, targets, costs and bonuses firmly in their place, behind that of the people, behind that of the customer. So in order to do this, we need things that work. We need conscious tools. And we need to use these conscious tools to bridge between community and technology paradigms. Because unless we can actually deliver things like free energy technologies into the hands of the people who need them, then you have both parties who actually want to get together and make a marriage, if you like, but for some reason they're both looking at the costs or whatever. So we need bridges, we need tools, we need to find the assumptions that are enabling us not to work together, and we need to find ways of overcoming them. So I want to deviate a little bit. I know it sounds rude, but we're going to go into a little bit about sustainable community, because free energy is a key part of this. And I want to explain some of the technologies that are already around and how incredibly exciting they are, and the implications that that brings for all of us, individually, as a family, as brothers and sisters, and as a community. So we can make straw bale buildings in a matter of days. We reckon about 10 people per day for 10 days, and you can make a fairly decent straw bale building. And that is based on the Hobbit House example, which took a guy 130 days in Wales and cost £5,000. But if we coat this with magnesium oxide, the world's 8th most ubiquitous natural material, and we mix that with phosphate, such as animal dung, then it makes a crystal, it makes a polymer, a geopolymer. One that is twice the weight of water, so it's lighter than aluminium. It can be 6 times stronger than steel, 20 times stronger than concrete, radiation proof, EMF proof, and provides a positive magnetic environment for people, plants and animals to live in. Interesting. We can use things like the Volksgarden to grow our food. We can use hydroponics and aquaponics, and if we layer upon layer these plant beds in a building, then in a place like Norway, where the growing season is only about 4 months, we can grow all year round, and we can grow many, many times the amount of crops in a controlled environment that we can outdoors, which means that we can leave the outdoors to nature, and nature can look after itself. We can distill and we can energize our water, which again means that we're using less for our plants, but it's also resonant with the human body. Health. How many of you know what these things are? These came out of the Russian space program. Unbelievable. This is an energy healing machine called the Scanar. It creates a biofeedback loop with the body. This is called the Cosmotic. It has 46 biofeedback loops with the body. That technology, this one, the latest generation, is about $2,000 or so, $2,200. And when you use it with a low-level laser, it creates cellular regeneration in the body. They're currently using this to grow teeth. They take about 3 months, and they're quite challenging little devils. But hearts, you can replace those in weeks. And that's good news if you've had a heart attack, because it ends up with a scar. So we can regrow our bodies with this technology. It is not outrageously expensive, and we can turn the cost into a potential profit opportunity, even by working through asking for donations from people, and we can heal people along the way. How's that for sustainability? Waste. We can use waste to energy to yield precious metals, gold, silver, palladium, titanium, and energy and water. That's not bad. That's an existing technology. And there are many other types of energy emerging at the moment. So The issue is abundance, and what is the sticking point? Is it really money, or is it our level of thinking, which needs to evolve to cope with a new level of complexity? So how can we deal with this? We can create energy-backed credit, for example. So we can set up a trust, we've spoken about that, and we can create a currency linked to energy in the kilowatt hour or the megawatt hour or whatever. Why not? Everyone else is creating alternative currencies. Thousands of them are emerging. Why not create one that's backed, though, and is linked to the value of energy? So if we were to do a deal as a community, say, with an inventor and say, hey, can we pay you half the money in our currency, which is going to be linked to the energy that you produce, then you say, thank you very much. You've just given me an inflation hedge. That protects the position of the inventor. And meantime, while we're selling the surplus energy, we're collecting the dollars, the pounds, or the euros to exchange those notes at a later date. We can create a currency on the spot, and we can sell it to collectors, investors, and community members. And that means that we can buy energy technology, or we could even build it under license. And there's a good idea. If we've got a simple enough technology, why don't the inventors let the communities, because they've got some brilliant hearts and minds, great engineers and scientists, why not let them do some building for them and give them a diversified production model across the world as well? We can sell our energy surpluses as export, and even that can go to the grid, or if necessary, it can go privately. What most people don't realise is that privately we can create our own law. And that means that we can raise income ourselves. So how do we make the law? Can I buy your pen? I'll offer you $1. Yep, that's a deal. That's a contract. We've just made law. So we can offer this currency exchange to the inventor. And there's a picture of the Volksgarden machine. The result of the fact that the plants are growing upside down and that thing rotates once an hour is that the crops produce 2 or 3 times as fast growth as they would in a normal environment where they're just growing upright against gravity. So let's have a look at new currencies. There's 3 functions of money. Rust becomes relevant at this point. In currency terms, it's called demurrage, or a gradual reduction in value, and that is useful for a currency that needs to flow, because if it's starting to reduce in value, it means that we tend to exchange it a little bit more. And in fact, there is a natural path of deflation as efficiency increases. So the first television or VCR cost an absolute fortune to produce, but by the time we've produced 500 million of them, the unit cost has gone through the floor. So our energy-backed currency can create an inflation hedge, as well as an exchange, and a store as well for the inventor. So there are 3 actual roles of money. One is a mechanism of exchange, one is a stable measure of value, and one is a method of saving. So there's a fundamental conflict in the existing system between the exchange mechanism and the storage mechanism. So we need another kind of currency, and why not create a currency that is linked to using approaches like resonant frequencies to remove toxins from mining or from radiation or something like that. So we can buy land, we can buy toxic land, we buy it cheap, we restore it using these technologies, we restore the planet to nature, and that restores the value of the land. We can also create a new bank. What are the functions of a bank? A currency exchange. Well, we can do that ourselves, or we can employ software, or we can engage with a company who does that. A store of wealth. Well, we've mentioned a trust, but a bank or a safe deposit box will also do that. And the ecosystem. Well, there are other organizations that can do that in terms of swift processing, credit card transactions, etc. And at the moment, we do need a plug into the system, and there's just one entity that's available to do that I know of, and many others exist, and that's called a Swiss trust company. So a community which ended up with $1 million or so, and that doesn't take that many people, could in fact buy its own Swiss trust company and set up all of these other functions themselves. We could also keep those functions separate. We could keep it as a private club. And if we don't call it a bank and we don't take it public, then we're not imposing on public law. And that means it's frankly none of the business of the government or anyone else as to what we do. We're entitled to do this. We're the people. We're the source of all of the energy in the economy. So the separation of functions is important. So this creates some business opportunities for us. Big is cumbersome and small is going to be beautiful in the future because it's going to be a lot quicker. It brings us into large and small opportunities, home building, local building, conversion of transport, home and community. And diversity requires seeding and empowerment. So we can work from the ground up and not top down. Bottom up and top down will eventually emerge because eventually the top does have to respond to overwhelming pressure. But this survival is based on flexibility and cooperation. So I just want to mention open source very quickly for any inventors in the audience. We've mentioned that we can have a commercial contract, we can bang our products into trust, and we can use copyright to protect our interests. We're also looking at legal fee cover and the ability to self-fund this ourselves because the entity then holds IP, which is valuable. So this is what new paradigm funding looks like. We can use what works from the old and we can move the energy in a new way. We can create credit. If you allow me to buy your iPad and say that I can pay you $1,000 next week, we've just created credit between ourselves. The difference between that and what a bank does is a bank puts it on a public register and we can do that ourselves. So we could even use that to buy prepaid life insurance. And the interesting thing about that is that life insurance can be resold once someone's paid a policy, and it costs 1/5 of the value to actually buy it, so 20 cents in the dollar. And it's also guaranteed to pay by law. And that gives us an unprecedented level of security for securing projects, for example. So we can move our security of a bank from things like mortgages, etc., to insurance, and that will benefit the bank. Why? Because it makes more sense than land, property or gold, which all go down as well as up. But an insurance policy worth $1 million will pay $1 million, and that's guaranteed by law. So the only risk of that is diversification is overcome by diversification, by more than one policy, and by selecting those policies that are likely to pay off earliest. So we're coming back to intent, process and structure. Intent is everything in what we do. And so we need our stable values, and our intent must be based on conscience, which is linked to frequency. And there are implications also along the way of how we fund intention-based technology. That gives us the potential for a joint venture funding model where we can take funding in and we can use the insurance to secure the interests of the funders, and we can use the rest of the funds to put into intention-based technologies, separating out those functions. So here's a quick summary. We can avoid us and them, and we can do this in a way that makes a win-win-win for us, the people, the planet and society as a whole. We can need to connect with what is recoverable from the old system and enable it to flow and to change to help to build the new system, even if it's just on a transitional basis. And that can be used to create a transitional bridge from the old to the new. In order to do that, we need to consider everything as tools and to select those tools consciously and recognize the inherent strengths and weaknesses in everything. And if we do that, we can make a new sustainable and abundant system using sustainable models. So these are the themes that I've mentioned through this talk. What does that mean? Baby and bathwater. When we're talking about organizations, systems, finance, economics, etc., it can be a bit like, woo, this for some people. So let's just be aware and bring our consciousness into that and consider the intent and how we can reframe things like leadership, which has been fatally flawed and corrupted, and differentiate in our minds between bad leadership and good leadership. That's Lao Tzu, and he was the guy who said, be still as a mountain and flow like a great river. The useful resources for cellular regeneration and MOSO, I can explain to you, and we'll put them on the website. that is not just a little visual joke about complaints, it's a mug. When we're considering our tools, the simplest tool that you can possibly imagine is something like a coffee cup or a mug. But it doesn't work if we turn it upside down. And we need to bring that level of consciousness into all the tools that we use for sustainability. Thank you very much.
Now we're just going to take 2 to 3 minutes to set up the laptop so that Mark Leclerc can be interviewed by Moray King via Skype. So just going to take about 2 to 3 minutes to set that up.